Broadly speaking, if you look at the global aviation industry, almost every major airline falls into one of two buckets. First, you have the ex or still government-owned airlines. Think British Airways, Qantas, Emirates, Singapore Airlines, etc. And then there's the disruptors. These are the brainchildren of ambitious founders who found a gap in the market, often by making seats smaller or prices lower, think Ryanair, Southwest, AirAsia, but sometimes they just offered a different type of service. The JetBlues and Virgin Atlantics of the world. But then we have STARLUX. STARLUX doesn't really fit into either bucket. It wasn't built because the Taiwanese market had a gap. In fact, Taiwan, a small island with 24 million people, wasn't in desperate need for a third full-service carrier. They already have China Airlines and EVA. The duopoly was set. And well, it's by no means being started by the government. They own the aforementioned China Airlines. No, STARLUX was born not out of any market necessity, but out of a very specific, very personal human emotion. Revenge. This week, I go and fly STARLUX, but more importantly, we dig into the rather Succession-like story behind STARLUX and their rather fascinating founder, Zhang Guowei. Also, Surfshark is back again this week, but we'll get into that a little later in the video. Alright, welcome back. We're in Narita Airport, flying to Taiwan on STARLUX. Flight in economy, so nothing that special. I have to be honest with you guys here. I was about to get kind of grumpy. Firstly, I couldn't get a window seat. I booked this ticket fairly last minute, and there was no window seats available. But usually I can fandangle one at check-in by just asking nicely. So there's no window seats, even exit right? So I had no luck there. That's fine, I'm a grown-up, I can deal with that sort of thing. But then this happened. They've just sent my bag off without a tag.
Is your luggage was black?
It's kind of a clear. It's a bit clear almost. It looks like that.
Is it your luggage?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Also, go see them before boarding. Okay. No, that's okay. Thank you. Basically, I went in there wanting to try and get a window seat, but the dude, they got like the lady on the counter and then the guy who handles the bag, he just sent my bag off before they put a tag on it. And so currently there's no evidence of me even having a bag. I think they'll intersect the right bag. I don't know, am I about to lose my bag? Though, to be fair, it's not STARLUX's problem. I'm pretty sure the check-in staff were from Japan Airlines. So anyway, we're on the rooftop deck of T2 or something right now. Guess I'll shoot some planes. That bag really annoys me. This is the most upright chair. Anyway, let's get into STARLUX and Taiwan and all of that. In, I'll admit, that overly dramatic intro, I stated that STARLUX was created not out of market necessity, but out of revenge. What am I talking about here? Well, our story centers on Zhang Guowei. He's often simply known as KW, and well, my Chinese isn't exactly great, so that's what we'll call him for the rest of this video. He's the fifth child of Zhang Yongfa, the founder of the Evergreen Group. This is the massive Taiwanese shipping conglomerate that also happened to, in 1989, start an airline, EVA or EVA Air. Now, here's where the succession parallels come in. Zhang Yongfa had a wildly successful business career, but his family life was messy. His first marriage led to 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. But in 1970, he had a 5th child, KW, with his long-term mistress, Li Yu Mei, who he would later go on to marry. This, of course, made things complicated. Zhang Yongfa was a brilliant businessman, but by all accounts, he was hot-tempered. He constantly feuded with his children. The 3 older sons from his first marriage would cycle in and out of the family business. They would drop out after some blow-up with their father, disappear for a while, and then maybe resurface later. They were also more focused on the shipping side of things. But KW, he was different. He loved aviation. He started his career as a mechanic at EVA Air, before leaving for 3 years to be an inspector at McDonnell Douglas on the MD-11s. He then went back to EVA and worked his way up to being the president of the airline by 2005. He was on a path to the top, almost definitely of the airline, but potentially the entire Evergreen empire. But then in 2006, he quit. The details are murky, but there was clearly some kind of falling out with his father. Most people, after quitting the family business in their mid-30s, might go do something else entirely. Start a new venture, invest in real estate, take some time off, whatever. But when I said that KW loved aviation, I was not mixing my words. No. KW during this period went to America to learn how to fly jets. In my opinion, an excellent use of his time. He earned his commercial pilot's license and became type rated on the Boeing 777-300, EVA's flagship long-haul aircraft, by 2010. He then reconciled with his father, returning as the chairman of EVA Air in 2013. In 2014, he was also appointed the vice chairman of the entire Evergreen Group. The prodigal son had returned. Under KW's leadership, EVA Air thrived. He was aggressive. He championed the full switch from Boeing 747s to the more fuel-efficient twin-engine 777s. He also pushed for rapid fleet expansion. In 2015, EVA placed an order for 26 new Boeing wide-body aircraft, the largest order in Taiwanese commercial aviation history. Analysts at the time called this a bold move for what had been a fairly stagnant industry. He was also creative. In 2011, he revived and leaned harder into a previous tie-up the airline had from 2005 with the Japanese entertainment giant Sanrio. This is, of course, that fleet of Hello Kitty jets. This was a marketing masterstroke that earned the airline outsized attention globally. And the results showed. In 2015, KW's third year as chairman, EVA Air booked revenues of $137 billion. New Taiwanese dollars, this comes out to about $4.5 billion USD. But it was the best performance for the company since going public in 1999. But here's the thing about family businesses. KW's three older half-brothers, the sons from his father's first marriage, controlled far more of the Evergreen shares than he did. And reportedly, they were not happy. They disapproved of KW's expensive advertising campaigns. They disapproved of his rapid fleet expansion. They rarely appeared in public while KW had become the face of the airline. Whether it was jealousy, genuine strategic disagreement, or just the simmering resentment of watching your father's illegitimate son become the golden child, who knows? It was probably a mix of all three. Here's the thing though, as long as their father was alive, there wasn't much they could do about it. But then, on January 20th, 2016, at 88 years old, Zhang Yangfa died. Before we get into what happened next, the succession-style boardroom feud, what a beautiful place for me to tell you that today's video is brought to you by Surfshark. I'm traveling a lot these days, and the more that I hop between countries, the more I realize that the version of the web that we see really depends on where we are. China is the obvious example. The first time I got to Shanghai, I opened up my laptop and half of my usual internet didn't exist. No YouTube, no Instagram, not even Gmail. And this is where Surfshark VPN comes in. I turn it on, and all of a sudden, all of my web traffic is flowing through an encrypted tunnel to a Surfshark server in another country. This means that websites only see that final Surfshark server, not my real location. I'm no longer stuck with a geo-blocked or restricted version of the web. Surfshark also adds an extra layer of encryption, so whoever runs a network or even the ISP can no longer see what I'm up to. All they see is encrypted data flowing to a Surfshark server. I also want to mention Surfshark Alert, because Surfshark is more than just a VPN. Alert is a 24/7 data leak monitoring tool that alerts you if things like your passwords, credit cards, or IDs get leaked online. This lets you jump in early and lock things down before it turns into a bigger problem. As an Australian, with all of the data breaches that we've seen recently, this feels more important than ever. So, if you want to get protected and alerted, head to surfshark.com/flight formula or use the promo code flight formula at checkout to get an extra 4 months. Big thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. What happened after the passing of Zhang Yangfa set everything in motion for Evergreen, EVA, and eventually STARLUX. In December of 2014, he had written a will, a sealed will that nobody outside of the patriarch's inner circle knew about. And on February 18th, 2016, less than a month after his father's death, KW made it public. The family was still discussing succession plans. Nothing had been agreed upon. KW later expressed regret for disclosing it so early, but the move was clearly strategic. He wanted to settle the question before his brothers could organize against it. And the will was explosive. It named KW as the sole inheritor of his father's personal estate, worth approximately 14 billion new Taiwanese dollars, or about $430 $30 million USD. But crucially, it designated him as the successor to the entire Evergreen group. And once this was public, KW didn't hesitate. He promptly elevated himself from vice chairman to chairman of the Evergreen group, effectively declaring himself king of the Evergreen empire. His three older brothers were furious, and please note, I'm not ignoring the daughter, she passed away in 2015. The brothers said the details of the succession were still being discussed, and this was a premature move. But more importantly here, they had the ammo to fight back. In EVA Airways, it was close, but everywhere else in the Evergreen empire, shipping, storage, the main holding company, the three brothers collectively held majority stakes. KW was outnumbered, and this all came to a head on March 11th, 2016. You see, KW was not just the chairman of EVA Airways and the newly crowned chairman of the whole Evergreen group. He was also a captain on the Boeing 777. He would regularly fly scheduled passenger services for EVA. And on the 11th of March, a standard Friday, he was scheduled to fly EVA Air Flight 225, a routine early morning service from Taipei down to Singapore. While KW was in the air, somewhere over the South China Sea, his three half-brothers had convened an unscheduled board meeting at Evergreen's headquarters. In a matter of 30 minutes, 7 of the 9 board members voted to replace KW as chairman of EVA Air. KW loyalists were either fired or reassigned. Upon arrival at Singapore's Changi Airport, KW was no longer chairman of the airline he had just piloted. To rub further salt in the wound here, the new management reportedly deemed KW a safety risk, preventing him from piloting the return leg home from Singapore. He was forced to fly back to Taipei as a passenger. But the brothers weren't done there. Over the following days, they moved to boot KW from the boards of the other Evergreen businesses. One of the brothers went even further, formally contesting the will in court, alleging procedural defects in how it was executed. This case would end up dragging on for 8 years, but we'll get to that outcome a bit later in the video. Either way, KW was now out from Evergreen and stuck in a family court battle. So what do you do when you've been publicly ousted from your family's company in the most humiliating way possible? Most people would walk away, fight the legal battle over the will from a yacht in the Caribbean, but KW didn't do that. He moves, and he moves fast. By November 2016, just 8 months after the coup, while the Evergreen dispute was still very much unresolved, KW announced his intention to start a new airline, STARLUX. This name was deliberate. In Chinese, it's this. Yeah, I think the pronunciation is something like Xingyu Hong Kong, but either way, this translates roughly to Star Universe Airlines. The star here is a homage to his father, the mariner who navigated by the stars before the age of GPS. And the universe, that represents KW's own ambitions, to build something that could reach beyond anything his family had done before. Officially, STARLUX has always been framed as a premium airline built from scratch, an attempt to create one of the best airlines on Earth, or at least the best in Asia, on KW's own terms. And that's probably all true. But if we zoom out here, a man doesn't get fired while flying one of his airline's planes and then pours hundreds of millions of his own dollars into building a direct competitor to his family's airline because he had some detached, purely rational insight about the need for a new premium airline in Asia. STARLUX exists because KW had something to prove. But here's the thing. Having the money and the motivation wasn't enough. He had to get past the government first. Starting an airline in Taiwan is, by design, really, really hard. Taiwan's aviation market was effectively a duopoly, and the rules were not written for newcomers. In 2016, the regulations required that any applicant for an international airline license already be a company with 5 years of international transport or foreign trade experience, and with annual revenues exceeding 6 billion new Taiwanese dollars. It was the classic regulatory moat. It protected the incumbents, China Airlines and, somewhat ironically, EVA Air. But KW didn't have 5 years. He was starting from scratch, and what followed was a period of intense lobbying. KW's camp argued that the regulations stifled innovation and was a relic of a protectionist era. Critics, including, unsurprisingly, voices from the incumbent airlines, argued that aviation safety required institutional maturity, not just one man's money. But the Ministry of Transportation eventually came around. They recognized the potential economic benefit of a new carrier and, frankly, the absurdity of blocking a former airline airline chairman from the industry. And so in March of 2018, the rules were revised. The new rules created an alternative pathway. If you couldn't meet the 5-year history requirement, you could bypass it by meeting much higher financial thresholds. You also needed to have at least 3 aircraft and an executive team with proven aviation management experience. People started calling this the Zhang Guo clause. He met the capital requirements easily. Reportedly, he was prepared to invest his entire inheritance into the venture. STARLUX was formally registered on May 2nd, 2018, the first airline created under this new high capital regime. And from there, things moved quickly. He assembled an experienced management team. He secured aircraft orders, Airbus A321neos for regional routes, and A350s for longer haul services. And he partnered with BMW Design Works to create cabin interiors that would signal a very premium service from the moment that you stepped on board. Every decision was calibrated to send the same message. This is not a budget airline. This is not Eva Light. This is something better. By late 2019, STARLUX had received its first A321neo from Airbus and was finalizing its air operator certificate with Taiwan's Civil Aeronautics Administration. The approval came through on December 10th, 2019. Everything was in place. The planes were ready, the routes were approved, the crew was trained. STARLUX's first commercial flight was scheduled for January 23rd, 2020. Now, I need you to hold that date in your head for a second. January 23rd, 2020. On that morning, a STARLUX A321neo lifted off from Taipei, bound for Macau. KW, in his captain's uniform, took turns at the controls. The airline actually launched 3 routes that day: Macau, Da Nang, and Penang, with multiple daily frequencies planned for each. The flights were all nearly full. The Taiwanese public was curious about this new airline from the exiled Prince of Eva. Reviews were generally glowing. Everything suggested a textbook startup launch. Now, do we all know what else happened on the 23rd of January, 2020? That was the day that Wuhan went into lockdown. On the same day that STARLUX flew its first passengers, China sealed off an entire city of 11 million people to contain a mysterious new respiratory illness. Within weeks, that illness obviously became COVID-19 and global air travel collapsed. This was some divinely absurd timing. KW had spent 4 years planning, lobbying, and building. He'd poured over $200 million of his own money into this new airline. He'd overcome regulatory barriers that were literally designed to stop him, and the moment he finally got off the ground, literally piloting his own plane, a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic began. By March 2020, STARLUX had suspended regular operations. The brand new A321neos sat idle on the tarmac. For pretty much every airline out there, COVID was brutal. But for startup airlines that launched around this period, it was pretty much a death sentence. They typically had no cash reserves, no assets to liquidate, and when revenue goes to zero for a couple of years, they have no choice but to fold. STARLUX probably should have been one of them. They only had 3 aircraft, no real revenue history, and they literally launched the same week as a global pandemic began. But KW had something other startup founders didn't. Quite obviously, a personal fortune, and the willingness to spend it. He refused to cut salaries, and while other airlines slashed headcount, STARLUX kept everyone on payroll. Being small actually probably helped. The cash burn was manageable. KW during this period personally led additional funding rounds. He was all in. And here's the thing that I think really shows you how committed he was. Those A350s they'd ordered for long-haul routes, he kept them on the books. Most airlines were desperately deferring deliveries to conserve cash, but KW didn't. The A350s did end up arriving about a year late, but that was Airbus supply chain chaos, not STARLUX asking for a delay. He was planning for the moment the world reopened. That moment came in late 2022 when Taiwan reopened its borders. STARLUX sprinted out of the gates, rebuilding its regional network across Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, etc. Then came the moment that KW had been building towards since 2016. In late October of 2022, STARLUX took delivery of its first A350-900. KW flew to Toulouse for the handover, and then, of course, piloted the aircraft back to Taiwan. On April 26, 2023, STARLUX launched its very first long-haul route, Taipei to Los Angeles. This was the whole point. The Trans-Pacific market is where the money is, where Taiwan's position as a hub between Southeast Asia and North America actually matters. And from there, the long-haul expansion continues, with them now operating flights to 4 cities in the US. The financial turnaround was pretty remarkable. They faced 3 years of growing losses while the world was closed. But then when everything reopened in late 2022, everything changed. In 2023, revenue exploded, more than 6xing year on year, and for the first time, STARLUX turned a profit. And then in 2024, revenue hit 35.5 billion new Taiwanese dollars, with a profit of 1.32 billion. These are thin margins, but profit nonetheless. Now look, I'm not going to pretend to be a financial wizard here. I'll leave that up to Evan from Analytic Flying, but these results might be a little bit juiced, and they do, relatively, have quite a bit of debt. But I think they're generally heading in the right direction. Okay, now we can finally get back to that legal battle over Zhang Yangfa's will. On August 14th, 2024, years after one of the half-brothers launched legal proceedings, the Taiwan Supreme Court issued its final ruling. KW had won. The will was valid. The full multi-billion-dollar inheritance was confirmed as his. 2 months after all of this occurred, STARLUX went public. The IPO raised $9.4 billion, new Taiwanese dollars, just under 300 million USD, giving the airline the capital it needed to fund the next phase of fleet deliveries. The stock jumped 53% on its debut. Investors were betting big on KW. The airline he built from nothing was now a publicly traded company, and the inheritance that at least one of his brothers tried to take away from him was finally, legally, irrevocably his. So where does that leave us today? Well, as of early 2026, STARLUX operates a fleet of 30 aircraft, 13 A321neos for regional routes, 5 A330neos for medium-haul services. These weren't part of the original plan, but were brought in as a stopgap while the airline waited for delayed A350s. And well, yes, they now have 10 A350-900s for long-haul flights. And as of January 6th, their first A350-1000, the largest and longest-range aircraft in the fleet, was delivered. KW again was one of the pilots for this delivery flight from Toulouse. They now serve over 30 destinations across Asia and North America, with plans for US East Coast and European services later this year. And they've got 38 more aircraft on order, including 17 additional A350-1000s and 10 dedicated A350 freighters. The man who was fired from his family airline while flying one of their planes now runs his own rapidly growing multi-billion-dollar airline. I think he has gotten his revenge. So that's the backstory. But what's it actually like on board, and what's the future for this airline? Well, let's go fly to Taiwan and find out. I guess in some good news, at least, they did find my bag, and I now have a bag tag. She pulled out the iPad and showed me a picture of it, so they found my bag. It should show up in it should show up in Taipei. We're good. Let's just go to Taipei. So what's it like flying STARLUX? Well, this was a relatively short flight, but I have to say that even in economy, it's very nice. The food was pretty damn good, the cabin was immaculate, the in-flight entertainment was decent, but didn't quite have the depths of, say, an Emirates, and the tech was techie? I don't know. They had the Bluetooth audio option on the in-flight entertainment, and there was ample charging with standard power outlets and both USB-A and C charging. This was an economy flight, but in the world of economy seats, STARLUX is definitely up there with the best. And I guess that's the thing here. From day one, KW was explicit about this. STARLUX would not be competing on price. The internal benchmark wasn't the Taiwanese competition. It was the likes of Emirates, Qatar, and Singapore Airlines. The idea was to build what KW called the Emirates of Taiwan, a boutique luxury carrier that could compete with the best in the world. They've invested into all of the small details. They've developed their own custom scent that's diffused throughout the cabin. The onboard music is this custom jazz guitar tune, and the crew uniforms were designed by a Taiwanese fashion designer, mixing 1940s aviation glamour with something vaguely space age. This is the whole theme here. Space age but cutesy. They have these goofy looking mascots all over their branding. KW might well be the most well-rounded airline executive on Earth. He's not only able to fly all of his airline's planes, but he's also pretty incredible at creating a cohesive airline brand. This leads us into the big final question. Where does it all go from here? Let's speculate a bit, because the story has some threads that could play out in very different ways. STARLUX has built a genuinely solid foundation for what comes next. The all-Airbus fleet strategy brings real commonality, streamlines maintenance, and makes pilot training relatively simple. And the Trans-Pacific trunk routes are established, the Southeast Asian feeder network is taking shape, and the A350-1000s give them the capability for even longer haul routes. The freighters on order also show that they're building a second revenue engine beyond just passengers. They've also said that they plan to apply for One World membership before the end of 2025, but as we sit here in early 2026, there's no public announcement as to if they've been accepted or if they've even applied. What is clear is that they're building relationships. They've got a code-share partnership with Alaska and an interline agreement with American. They're wiring themselves into the US market piece by piece. But I guess the bigger question here is whether Taiwan can support 3 full-service international carriers. For reference here, South Korea, with a population of about 50 million, double that of Taiwan, has recently seen their 2 full-service carriers consolidate. After 4 years of regulatory wrangling, Korean Air completed its takeover of the financially troubled Asiana on December 12, 2024. The answer for Taiwan and STARLUX, if there is one, will be transit traffic. In 2019, Taipei's Taoyuan Airport handled about 5.3 million transit passengers. By 2023, they hit a record of 6.25 million, and by 2025, it was 6.8 million and growing. That is sort of the bet here. Not that Taiwan has 24 million people, it's that Taiwan is able to position itself as a connector between Southeast Asia and North America. I guess, for a bit of context here, Doha's Hamad International Airport handled 52.7 million passengers in 2024, and the airport says that over 12 million of those were point-to-point. This implies something like 40 million were connecting. That's what a pure transit hub looks like. Taiwan has hub ambitions, but it's still small on a global scale. Whether the transit growth is enough to feed 3 carriers, we'll see. But now let's go full speculative, balls to the walls movie mode here, because I think the most cinematic ending to this story isn't that STARLUX becomes a successful third airline. It's the Steve Jobsian-like return arc. For those unfamiliar, Jobs was ousted from Apple in 1985. He went and founded a new company called Next, and then returned as CEO of Apple in 1997, when they were struggling and desperate. He then put them on the path to being one of the largest companies on Earth today. Here's why a similar, but albeit different arc with KW isn't as crazy as it sounds. Firstly, despite going public and needing to raise capital during COVID, KW is still the majority owner of STARLUX. He's got just under a 55% stake. Meaning if anybody wants to do a deal involving the airline, they're basically just dealing with him. But secondly, and this bit's a bit murky, but he likely still has stakes in Evergreen. Reporting around the inheritance case describes the estate in broad buckets. There's money, shares, and property. But that very likely includes equity in Evergreen-linked companies. But even before the inheritance battle, his stake in Eva was about 11.45%. It was later reported that he exited this position completely in 2017. But what's not known is if he still kept personal stakes in other Evergreen companies. Either way, KW is likely not a complete outsider, at least economically, even after they threw him out of the boardroom. And on the flip side here, there are also reports that some of the top figures at Evergreen and at least one of his half-brothers has invested in STARLUX. So the ownership stakes might cut both ways. This isn't a simple Evergreen and Eva versus KW story. And then there's this strange Uni-Air detail. In April of 2022, in the middle of building STARLUX, KW is suddenly appointed chairman of Uni-Air. This is the regional sister airline of Eva Air and a subsidiary of the Evergreen Group. But by September of the same year, he stepped down from this role. Was this a trial reconciliation? What was going on here? Well, the family politics are complicated, but the short version is this. The eldest brother, Cheng Guo-hua, I think that's how you say it, was the one driving the 2016 coup and the battle over the will, and the 2 middle brothers have kind of drifted in and out of alignment with him over the years. In April of 2022, they backed a leadership change at Evergreen that brought KW into Uni-Air, but by September of 2022, they seemed to realign with their eldest brother, and KW stepped down. So who really knows what's going on behind the scenes here? But it kinda indicates 2 things. First, KW is still open to taking care of the family business if necessary, and that the family isn't some unified bloc that's completely against him. So here's my very speculative scenario. If the Taiwanese market or the general global aviation market hits a downturn, or if STARLUX keeps scaling and starts taking real premium market share away from EVA, or if Evergreen's leadership faces a succession vacuum, the brothers are in their 70s and KW is only in his mid-50s, then consolidation becomes the kind of idea that goes from unthinkable to incredibly logical. A merger between EVA and STARLUX would do three things at once. It removes a fast-rising competitor in a market that may not support three full-service carriers forever. It creates obvious business synergies, fleet planning, schedules, pricing power, loyalty, etc. The boring stuff that dominates boardrooms. But most importantly here, it offers the cleanest possible resolution to a decade-long dynasty fight. The guy they humiliated in 2016 returns, not begging but arriving in a position of power. He built an airline from scratch, he made a real long-haul player. That's at least the Steve Jobs analogy. Does that mean it'll happen? Of course not. There are a million reasons why it may never occur. Ego, culture, politics, regulators, antitrust, and the simple fact that KW might have zero interest in returning to the empire that exiled him. But personally, I'm a big fan of a blockbuster movie ending, and the Uniair episode is the quiet hint that this story may still have a few twists and turns left in it.
Your landing was one of the best on the A350. I have done a lot of hard landings on the 350, slamming on the runway.
Anyway, that's it. I hope you got something out of this one. I hope you learned something. If you did, I would appreciate it if you liked this video and subscribed. You can also follow me on Instagram here and LinkedIn here. Go check out flightformula.com. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.
Simon? Is that Simon?
What's Simon?
But now we got the real moment of truth. Did they actually find my bag? I'm like 80% confident that it's here. Oh, thank God. The more I think about it, Japan is probably the only place in the world where you can be sort of confident they'll actually find it. I'd be stressing a lot more if that happened pretty much anywhere else in the world. I need some good Taiwanese food and then bed.